The time's not messed up, Laura. Laura. It's just that my clock on my computer will not sync to regular time, so it's like 4 minutes off. What time is it supposed to be, actually? Yeah, I don't know why. It's 4 minutes. It's 4 minutes off. So, hey, Jaglones, welcome to the show. That's our normal intro style thing now. We're going to try high energy. As usual, we have a great guest for you tonight. We are going to talk about a topic that I don't know how it took me this long to talk about because I love these guys. As we all know, isopod fans are crustacean fans, and these guys are getting a lot of attention right now. So we're starting with land crabs. We're going to talk about land crabs or like mixed crabs. We're going to get into all the crabs. So we're talking about every single crab that exists as we know it. And then Joe just left. So he's got like an hour, so he's going to talk really fast. So we're going to talk about crabs. I'm going to try not to talk about downstairs crabs, but it's probably going to come up a couple times. So, because it's funny. I think they're funny, and it's just a funny situation. So let's get Joe in here. I was going to try to get him to laugh before we did, but it didn't quite work. So here he is. Joe from Asheville Wildsides.
Hey.
How are we doing?
Doing well.
It has been a minute. I think scorpions was the last thing we talked about together.
Yes, I believe so. Back before the holidays. Yeah.
I believe so. Yeah. So, and always a good episode. You can tell that you're some kind of an educator. So yeah. It shows a lot because I learn a lot every time I have you on. I have to go back and watch.
That's awesome.
Yeah, I don't pick everything up while I'm in the moment, so it's a lot. It's a lot running this high-end show, and
all the production hurdles you've got to mantle.
Yeah, getting my clock to work.
Yeah.
Getting the clock on my computer to be 4 minutes earlier. But yeah, welcome back. It's great to have you. Thank you for coming.
Oh, yeah.
I'm always worried when I have somebody on, they're like, I'm not doing that again. That was a mess. So
no.
I
love talking about the things I love, and so I'll happily join you on these escapades and adventures.
You are like too many of us, where you keep a ton of different things. So
my interests are broad, and it's reflected in my collection and the maintenance time that was required to care for it. So yeah, it's
a full-time job. It's like
very much.
I don't even have that many things, and it's a full-time job. I took 20 minutes last night to do my isopods, and I was like, oh, yeah, I'm so tired now. Yeah, I did my counts. Everything's doing well. But This episode is going to help me. We're going to touch, I don't know how much you had planned to talk about vampire crabs, but that's my goal. So I'm gonna pick on those probably.
Sure. I mean, I brought some vampires as well as a few other species of crabs that have been in the hobby for a while. Others are kind of intermittently available. They kind of come and go. A lot of these organisms are wild caught, and so they can fluctuate seasonally based on availability and collection times within countries of origin. But decapod crustaceans, crabs, have been kind of a slowly growing little subset, a niche hobby of the invertebrate hobby. And there are some interesting overlaps. I mean, there are a handful of species that appreciate more aquatic environments. And so then you get a lot of freshwater fish hobbyists that start experimenting with some of these animals. And then like you mentioned, the popularity of genus Geososoma, the vampire crabs, they have a lot of overlapping care requirements with things like poison dart frogs and microgeckos and other vertebrate organisms that have become popular in the hobby. And people have really kind of pivoted to focus on these animals as they are fairly low maintenance, easy to care for, absolutely stunning. Some species are incredibly beautiful. Some are a little bit more muted, but as a group, they're easy to care for, paludarium and vivarium inhabitants. And definitely have kind of risen in popularity. I see a lot more species availability. When the genus kind of first became available, predominantly from like Indonesian fish exporters and stuff, it was a really limited affair, basically things that were just kind of the bycatch of these guys that were going out catching rainbow fishes and other things in Indonesia. But now that they've kind of become more popular, there's definitely a lot more availability. They're captive breeding fairly successfully. Most species, at least, are culturing without a tremendous effort.
Really?
So yeah, and that gives us a lot of promising future for that group of crabs as well. If we can establish sustainable captive breeding populations, and there's less reliance on this, waning and waxing availability of import animals.
That's always a good thing. That's
Oh yeah, very much so.
This is too much. Okay, that's a little better. I'm trying to let my plants grow. So, yeah, no, that's good. So what, let's just jump right in. So
yeah.
Crabs, you mentioned are decapods. That's awesome. That means the 10 limbs. Does that include the claws? Are they included in that? Is it the same deal?
So, like when you're counting, just like with arachnids, when you look at the legs of a scorpion, they have 8 legs for locomotion, and then a pair of claws. Let me just go and get a guy out here real fast.
That's for you guys. I just conned him into bringing out the first crab. We have a lot of crabs to look at, guys. So they don't all make you itch. It's good.
So this species, this is G. carcinus lateralis, and I'm going to try and position it so that you can kind of see it there in camera. But you can see 8 primary limbs for locomotion, and then a pair of pinchers on the front. These claws.
He's sure demonstrating his locomotion.
Yeah. I'm going to try and let him kind of relax a little bit so he's less likely to fall off my sleeve. There we go.
Now, if he did fall off and get hurt, he's one of the guys that, like his next molt, he would grow a leg back if he lost.
Yeah, I mean, so if this animal here were to become injured, if I were to aggressively grab it or pin it, restrain it by grabbing onto one of the legs, they'll absolutely spontaneously separate those legs in order to avoid that potential predatory interaction, and those appendages can regenerate in subsequent molts, and they can. I've had specimens in my care that arrive again, especially like with this species lateralis. These are wild caught, imported, field collected animals from the Caribbean. And so you get animals in a wide variety of conditions when they arrive. Some of them are missing legs, some of them are missing claws, and some of those injuries occur during the collection process. Some of them just happen from natural predation, and that happens to be the crab that gets caught. And given time, they will absolutely regenerate those appendages. You do want to be careful with overcrowding and cohabitating these animals. Land crabs, while they will congregate periodically en masse for a variety of reasons, reproduction, food source availability, overly arid or dry conditions will sometimes cause them to have to hunker together in areas where there's enough humidity that their respiratory system can still function. But under ideal care situations, they're relatively solitary animals. They move away from one another. They establish their own individual burrows. So you do want to be cautious, housing them with overcrowded conditions. But overall, absolutely fascinating land crabs. And this is genus G. carcinus. And these guys, you'll see this species listed occasionally with various binomial nomenclature. You'll see them occasionally listed as G. carcinus quadratus. The ones that we have in the hobby now are almost exclusively lateralis, and they're coming from tropical Caribbean islands, northern parts of South America. Quadratus and lateralis, there's a lot of taxonomical confusion with whether or not they are truly distinct species. Quadratus, if you agree with that taxonomical approach of separating the two species, quadratus are only found on the western coast of Mexico, whereas lateralis are much more widespread throughout the Caribbean. But these are commonly called moon crabs or Halloween crabs. There's dozens of common names attributed to these animals. Whatever importers and retailers think sounds good and sells well, you'll see again tons of common names, and that's the same with even things like our vampire crabs. That common name. While some people will say, "Oh, it's because their eyes glow," it's very likely just somebody needed a really catchy name for these weird little crabs coming out of Indonesia, and it happened to stick. So, but yeah, they're fascinating animals. Eight legs for locomotion, a pair of well-defined claw structures that they use to pick and grab at food. They will sift through sediment for small food particulate using their claws in some circumstances. These are claws for defense, for sparring, for climbing, for excavating tunnel structures. They're incredibly gregarious animals. Pair of fairly well-developed eye stalks that emerge out of the top of the, I'm sorry, I'm trying to look at the camera so we can see where we're positioning our guy. But yeah, you see a couple good eye stalks. And then if we flip the crab over, we can look at some other anatomy.
He's going to love that.
Right with us.
I feel that he's totally going to love that. He's just going to.
So I'm going to angle the camera a little bit here so you can
pop legs off.
Trying to see. So we've got mouth parts directly underneath the eyes and a small pouch under her body. Get her positioned again.
So this is a lady. All right.
Yeah, small pouch under her body there. That is the brood pouch. If this was a male specimen, it would be a little bit more angular and extend further up the underside of the body. And that's where she's going to store developing ova while they're slowly developing before dispersal. And if this were a vampire crab, she'd hold on to those eggs during that development. But because this is genus Carcinus, even though these animals are land crabs, they're still very much rooted to a marine environment. They have to return to brackish water estuaries, intertidal pools to deposit all of those Dinopoli, the larvae. And those are planktonic larvae. They have tens of thousands of ova that they release in mass back into the ocean. They join the plankton in the water column. The vast majority of them end up being consumed by other organisms, but a percentage, enough survive that they can make the journey back to land, emerging as megalopa larvae, which are small. They look like very small miniature versions of adult crabs. They're usually brightly colored, aposematically colored, bright reds typically, and that those megalopa larvae are what emerge from the ocean and then climb up on the land and begin living as the adult crabs do, completely independent of marine environments, with the exception, again, of returning there to deposit eggs.
Yeah, that's they get eaten again and again.
Yes, yeah. Yeah. Crabs, for all their successes, are still somewhat foundational animals in a lot of the food webs that they survive in. So yeah,
it's like at every stage. The eggs are delicious. The Dinopoli are delicious. The plankton is delicious.
Oh yeah, the adult crabs. Yep.
I haven't had. Yeah, I was gonna say that. What's that pop tab on the bottom called? Where they do. Like I've had blue crabs, and you flip them over, and there's that little like. It's like a beer tab. You just pull it and it pops right off. The whole back section just pops right off. And then you're like, oh, good. There's still stuff in here. Yeah. Sorry, I love a crab. This is making me a little hungry. So now with these guys that are land crabs, they still obviously they need moisture. They need access to
so I mean we call them land crabs, and then that is a fairly good it's a fairly good descriptor of their environment and how they've survived and evolved to be somewhat, again, independent of the ocean. But yeah, they're still moisture dependent organisms. Their respiratory structures only work with proper humidity and moisture levels. So a land crab like this species here, G. carcinus, are air-breathing crabs. If you were to place this animal in a container of water and it had no way to exit that water, the animal would actually drown. They have an inefficient gill structure system. Now, some other semi-aquatic crabs have better functioning gills that are more capable of extracting oxygen from an aquatic environment. And then obviously there's marine and freshwater crabs that are fully aquatic organisms that only venture onto land for short periods of time, generally just moving between bodies of water rather quickly. But these guys here, G. carcinus and the vampire crabs we'll look at here in a minute, are very much independent of aquatic environments. Again, these guys, they still require the ocean for reproduction, whereas the vampires, which is one thing that makes them so special, is that they're completely independent of that marine environment.
Okay, they keep their babies. We'll get into that more. Now these land crabs, and there's going to be different. What do we have? We have land crabs. We have fully aquatic, and we have like the vampire.
Yeah, so I brought 4 different species. This is the smaller of the 2 land crabs I have in this genus. I have a really large male ruricola to share with you as well, who's a big old boy in the same genus, but a very different species.
Yeah. So quick question. We can touch on this just base on it. But so the land crabs, I think we're all familiar with, like fully aquatic needs a tank. Semi-aquatic needs both.
Yeah.
What's a setup for these guys to look like? Like, I feel like that would be.
So these guys are fairly easy to care for. Some people stress over providing proper care for this genus, but they're really not complex animals. I house them fairly efficiently in. I find large plastic tubs to be the most efficient housing system for them. You can ventilate those as needed so that you can more accurately and appropriately adjust the humidity. I use large plastic tubs. You start with big 96 quart totes, especially for the larger of the two species. I give them plenty of substrate depth. Anywhere between 6 to 10 inches of substrate depth, and if you give them more, they will absolutely use more. But as long as they have substrate in which to burrow, they won't stress as badly. Lots of leaf litter on top of that substrate. A heat pad that is continuously generating thermostatically controlled heat so that you can regulate that temperature inside the tub and keep it nice and warm and humid. And then about once every 4 or 5 days, you could probably even stretch it to once a week or so. I put a shallow dish of fresh water, dechlorinated fresh water, in each of their land crab tubs, and I'll leave that for about 24 hours. If you leave it longer, they will just turn it into a swamp in your enclosure. You'll have mud. So, but I leave it for about 24 hours, and what that does is that allows those land crabs that do need to return to some moisture and maybe even refill a little bit of moisture around their gill filaments. They will climb in there. They'll soak. They'll purge some of the moisture that they've been carrying around with them and stored with them, and refresh it, and then they'll move back out of the water. Because again, these guys are completely capable of living in a terrestrial environment. So yeah, high humidity, warm ambient temperatures in the high 70s, maybe 80, 81, closer to the heat source. Soil to burrow in. They appreciate leaf litter because it makes them feel secure. They've got lots of hiding places, and they're quite content. They're omnivorous scavengers. So crabs in this genus appreciate animal protein. They will take prepared foods such as commercially available crab pellets. They also like fresh or frozen fish chunks and other crustaceans like shrimp. And they also get a little mix of some grated veggies. I offer some leafy greens, grated zucchini, grated yellow squash. They like fruits. Banana is always a big treat, but they'll also accept pear and apple and peppers. And yeah, they are omnivorous scavengers. They will pretty much attempt to sample almost anything that's offered to them, and you'll quickly learn like where the high value priority food items are. If you provide them with an assortment, you'll notice that they're picking through, looking for specific things.
That's funny that they're just like going to pick through sediment to find little morsels, but they'll pick through your buffet. Like,
absolutely, yeah. Like all the bananas gone as soon as it goes in. So yeah.
I'm the worst. I'd be like doing the video. Let's see if they like gummy bears.
Yeah.
They can eat it. They'll be fine. Sure. Gelatin could never hurt, right?
Yeah. It's animal based.
Don't feed your crabs gummy bears, guys. Don't do what I do or say to do. I probably wouldn't. That sounds really easy. So
yeah, they're not hard. Again, the land crabs like this genus G. carcinus are fairly low maintenance pets. Like you can set them up. You set them up correctly, you'll have a fairly long lived land crab. These animals, again, being field collected, you're going to get a variety of ages. Some animals may come into your care that are nearing the end of their natural lifespan, and they may only have months or maybe a few years left of longevity. You might also get younger specimens that still have multiple molts before reaching maturity. The average, and again, these are very much just averages based on care of wild collected specimens, but most people will have their land crabs for around 3 to 5 years. Again, if you end up with a very old specimen, you're probably looking at a shorter longevity, but yeah.
Fantastic. And then, but okay, so with them being burrowers, is this like you have another box of dirt that you occasionally see?
To an extent, yes. I mean, yeah, absolutely. These animals are naturally reclusive. They want to be out of direct light. They are very food motivated. And so typically, regardless of what time of day it is, if food is being introduced into the habitat after a couple days or so, you're going to have a much more active enclosure. You're going to have a lot of crabs surfacing to see what is on the menu and what's available. Occasionally you'll find a specimen moving from one location to another during daylight hours, but they're mostly going to be active at night. And in their environment in the Caribbean islands where it's incredibly hot during the day, they're nocturnal predominantly for survival purposes. One, it prevents them from drying out and desiccating. They can stay in their humid, moist burrows during scorching days when the temperatures are in the 90s and low 100s. And it also prevents a lot of diurnal predation. So they're able to avoid a lot of things that would otherwise encounter them if they were to be active during the day.
Yeah, imagine being bright orange moving through the underbrush. Could be a problem.
Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, these guys, now I want moon crabs. See, this is what I hate doing this show. Every time I turn off the camera, I'm like, now I gotta look up. Yeah. I'll be up for 2 hours tonight.
So let me set this guy back, and I'm gonna get out the other member of this genus that I brought to share with you.
Is that how you coerce them to come out? Is food?
To an extent. I mean, these I just dug up and stuck in smaller tubs to bring up here, and they don't have as many hiding places. So, for the purpose,
that's not a big deal. They'll just dig their burrow again. So
this is Tank.
Oh my gosh, yeah, he is.
Tank is G. Garcinus ruricola. So same genus as the crab we just examined, but a much larger species. This is a big male. Females can be a little bit smaller, but also tend to have smaller claws. And if he gets a good perch on my arm, he'll just kind of hang out there.
Okay. So he's just looking for a good spot to grab where he feels comfortable.
Yeah. Once he kind of gets to where he feels comfortable, he'll just kind of hang out on my arm. He just did a program yesterday at a local school, so he's been in front of a lot of eyes these last couple days. Okay. Yeah. So this is G. Garcinus ruricola, commonly called the black land crab, even though a lot of them display variable shades of purple and blue. There's even some orange variants that have a much lighter and brighter coloration. But they are incredibly large, stunning land crabs from the same areas as the lateralis we looked at, predominantly the Caribbean, but also northern parts of South America and even Florida. You'll find some ruricola populations in South Florida as well.
Okay.
But these are just like the lateralis we discussed, similar care. You're just increasing everything by metrics based on their size. So they need a bigger space. They need slightly deeper substrate. They need, if you're going to give them a water chamber for refreshing, you've got to have it large enough that they can fit in it. So you're just kind of increasing everything based on the larger size of this crab.
Well, now, and you want to make sure that water source that they can get out of it fairly easily. Like, can't these guys drown?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. If you were to take one of these animals in this genus and place it in a container of water that it wasn't able to get out of, you'd have a respiratory distress and potential drowning. So, and these guys are fairly good at climbing. As you can see how he's scaling my arm so well. These guys will climb. They will, especially in the wild, they'll climb fruit-bearing trees. They'll climb over fences and barriers to get to food sources like dog food and cat food that's been left outdoors. They will climb up trash cans and into people's waste bins to, again, find food resources when those options are available and easier. But they are really impressive crabs. Again, common names vary wildly, but you will occasionally see these animals labeled as things like zombie land crabs or satanic land crabs. Again, a lot of these common names are selected purely just to give some sort of shock or an interesting factor to the animal. It doesn't have really anything to do with it's marketing more than anything. So, but these guys are really fascinating. There are a couple species of Drosophila fruit flies that are endemic to the Caribbean, whose life cycle revolves around these crabs. The adult flies live on and amongst the crabs. The larvae live in small cavities and structures in their shell and their carapace, and they can build up to create a little bit of a compromise. They might be. They could be stress increasers, but you'll also, if there's an injury on the animal, you'll see those larvae move to that location. So when we receive these guys as field collected animals from the Caribbean, one of the first things I do is very slowly and delicately examine the specimens and remove any populations that I see of those larvae living on the crab to prevent, again, any stressors. Again, in the wild, I'm sure it's much more of a commensal relationship, but in captivity with nothing to control those populations, those fruit fly larvae begin to build up in really large numbers.
So you've got to keep them with like chameleons and
yeah. Again, I'm sure there's something in their environment, maybe some little Sphaerodactylus microgeckos or something, or running in and out of crab burrows, hunting the flies that live on the crabs. But in captivity, it's one of those things to just check for and watch for. But these guys are awesome. I love these crabs. They're, again, occasionally available. Periodic imports, mostly what field collected in like places like Barbados, but they are another one of those just infrequently available. When they're available, there's a bunch of them, and then they disappear for the remainder of the year in the season. And they are quite capable of delivering a fairly impressive defensive pinch. I've been grabbed a couple times by these guys, and it's noticeable.
It'll wake you up.
Yeah, very much so.
In the morning. He is just so active.
But these guys are a really good alternative. You'll occasionally see coconut crabs available in the hobby as well, and these guys are a really good alternative to that. They're more widely available, less expensive, and they're less care intensive and specialized. They won't cut through chain link fence the way Burgess Latro will. So yeah,
I can't imagine keeping them in anything but like an abandoned prison.
Where
you've got, or some kind of crazy concrete bunker.
Yeah.
Because you hear so many stories. It's like those guys in sulcata tortoises, the same.
Yeah, they're bad for breaking out of just about anything you try to keep them in. So they're big animals, hard to contain.
Just crazy. And talk about a healthy pinch, like they'll wreck your day.
Oh yeah, yeah.
I would like to propose, if anybody's watching this and about to sell some of those crabs at NARBC on Sunday or Saturday.
Oh, I'm sure there'll be some at Tinley. Yeah, yeah.
There are. Yeah, there definitely will be. Let's call them raccoon crabs because we get into the garbage that much. That's interesting.
Come up with a new trade name, common name.
Let's do it. It's interesting. I want a 5% cut if they sell raccoon crabs. I think that's amazing. So, and then those guys care is, again, very basic.
Yeah, both of those species of land crabs are very similar in care. They're both Caribbean terrestrial species, both of which are, again, a big plastic tub, heat, humidity, variety in food source, substrate deep enough to burrow in, and you've met all of their needs. Their care thresholds are pretty shallow. Molting processes, whenever you have larger invertebrate organisms, those subsequent molts there's always more of a risk of something going incorrectly or them struggling to extricate themselves if environmental conditions aren't exactly right. And so the bigger the animal gets, the higher those risks are. And so, if you are getting some of those bigger land crabs, occasionally you'll have specimens with molting complications if they're kept at too low of an ambient humidity or they're kept, too cool, then you could have specimens struggle with that. But again, as long as you're meeting their needs, they're not terribly difficult animals to care for, and they're big, impressive invertebrates that are always it's always a conversation piece, and it's something different. It's something that not a lot of other people are keeping or working with. One of the major barriers I'd say is the fact that as of now, there's no way to replicate their natural reproduction in captivity. So the animals are, by virtue of that, almost exclusively wild caught. The number of eggs, the complex planktonic stage. I'm sure that it could be replicated in like a laboratory setting, but there's very little impetus to do so. It's certainly not for the pet trade, and unless their numbers begin to decrease dramatically in the wild, there's no real major charge to culture them for food sources either. There's tons of crabs, and the number that are collected for the pet trade is a very, very small percentage compared to what is caught to be consumed in countries of origin. So
I'm sure. I mean, those claws.
Oh yeah. Yeah, there's some meat on those things.
Get that guy some butter and
yeah.
I just realized I remembered that I'd seen Crab Central Station as one of the like a hermit crab YouTube channel.
Yeah.
And they've actually bred the hermit crab.
Oh, that's awesome.
In captivity. Yeah, I didn't see the follow up like if they everybody's watching this right now and knows. I didn't see the follow up to see if they were all viable, but they had this. Like, it was like a jellyfish tank with the circulation.
Yep,
and the
yep. One of those
larva,
completely circular tanks to keep the water flow even. And that's awesome.
Yeah, the larva
probably doing like a green water habitat. Yeah,
their setup's crazy. You have to.
That's awesome.
Check it out. Like,
and again, like something like that could potentially be viable for these land crabs, but there's not. You know, again, they're very niche animals in the pet trade. There's not a huge demand for them. The ones that are readily available is inexpensive wild caughts, and so it's likely not to change unless, again, there's some, some major push to culture the species for, again, something besides the small number that are sold in the pet trade.
Right. That's it's amazing to me how much hobbyists can put into it just to do it. Let's just see what happens if we can pull this off. And I love to see that, because I would never imagine hermit crabs being bred in captivity. No,
that is surprising. That's awesome to hear, though.
Yeah, right. It's funny how YouTubers are always coming up with crazy things. Just some random YouTuber who's just insane about something. Like, you need to see their whole crab setup if you're into hermit crabs at all. Is any kind of crab. It mind boggles. Are these guys escape artists? Are they?
They can wedge themselves out of enclosures. You do want to be careful. Like when I set their habitats up, I make sure I use latching tubs that are secure. They will position their body in a way that they can push up against things, and if the lid is a simple snap on or snap off, or if you forget to latch it or something of that nature, they absolutely can push out of it. They are strong and consistent with their maneuvers and activities in the habitat. You can very quickly, you get one of these, especially those big, the Ruricola, you get one of those guys set up in a tub, and you very quickly learn, like, okay, he's moving from here to over there, and then up that corner, just from where the substrate is trampled and flattened from their continuous movement, which again is mostly at night. During daytime, they're going to find their burrow. I use large cork pieces to give them a start to a burrow, hollow out some substrate under it, and then they'll typically expand that a little bit to fit their needs. But as long as ambient humidity and temperature is consistent in the enclosure, you will occasionally catch them outside of that burrow. There's again, in the wild, they're avoiding hot, dry conditions of daytime by hiding, and in captivity, it's not always necessary. So you will see them from time to time.
Excellent. Is there a way that you could set up because the plastic tubs usually are clear? You get clear ones.
Yeah.
Where the hide is up against the side.
Yeah, I mean, you could probably fashion it in that way, and as long as there's not a tremendous amount of light coming in and making them feel compromised or exposed, I'm sure they would still use it.
Yeah. Okay.
So yeah.
Awesome. See, I like to see my stuff and then make a way to see it better.
I mean, you could absolutely set these guys up in glass enclosures as well. It's just for humidity control. If you're going to do a glass tank that has like a large screen lid, you're going to be then going back and doing something to then control that humidity better, using a piece of acrylic or plexiglass to cover the large portion of the screen. You're going to have to go back and modify it. Whereas if you start with something like a plastic tub that's already fairly sealed, you can work your way back from there with ventilation to make it work.
Genius.
Yeah.
You don't even need to put a screen cover on it. You can just drill holes and let them pull their little arms out.
Yeah. I probably wouldn't go that big of a hole if they're getting their claws out. You've gone too far. Yeah.
They want high fives, just like else. So who's next?
So another one before we look at vampires, these are a really cool species and one that I've really enjoyed keeping. This is an endemic species, the Solowezi, and they are, again, probably not as commonly known to terrestrial invertebrate hobbyists as they are fish keepers, because this is a fully aquatic species of crab. And when I say fully aquatic, they live their life in an aquatic environment. That doesn't mean that they're not capable of respirating on land, especially for short periods of time. Sorry, I'm trying to position this to where you can actually see the specimen. Yeah. They're kind of bolty and fast. But this is a panther crab from Solowezi, and they inherit that common name. I don't know how well you can actually see it, but they are... Sorry, my left and right's confused because the camera.
Yeah, it does it every time. Yep, gets me every time.
But they are somewhat spotted. They're kind of a brown to copper coloration with a series of black or very, very dark colored spots all over their body. And so that's where they inherit that common name, panther crab, from. But this is an aquatic species from Sulawesi that are unique with other aquatic crabs. Many aquatic crabs that you see in the fish trade sold as aquarium crabs are brackish water species, animals that at least need a percentage of their water chemistry to have salt. We use synthetic sea salts now, but this species is unique in the fact that they're truly pure freshwater crabs. You can't house these animals with zero salinity. They do well in a variety of water conditions, but my success with them has been lower particle hardness with a high general hardness. So I have a lot of dissolved minerals in their water, and that will somewhat bring your pH up. But then I've also got layers and layers of oak leaves and almond leaves in the water that provide more of a tannid water. It's a very dark water environment, lots of visual barriers, lots of places for them to hide. Like a lot of other crabs, they can be somewhat territorial, so you do want to watch overcrowding in the aquarium. And then people that are interested in freshwater crabs, bear in mind they're all opportunistic scavengers and predatory animals, and they will absolutely make attempts to feed on fish living in the environment with them. So you want to choose, if you're setting them up, if you're going to set up an environment, you're going to do an aquarium and you want to do something like the panther crabs, I definitely recommend choosing fish that are going to stay at the highest areas of the tank. Panther crabs can swim, but they don't have dedicated swimming legs, so they're not great at it. They're going to spend most of their time on the ground and on furniture, structures, wood, rock in the habitat. So if you choose fish that stay at the highest areas of the tank, they're going to probably be your safer options for cohabiting with any sort of freshwater crab. And I just always, again, tell people, please just do your research. Find out what species are actually being sold at your local pet stores or at your local fish stores. Do the research, find out what it is, ensure that you are actually getting a species that will live in the aquarium with your fishes. You're not getting a species that needs more of a terrestrial environment or emergent habitat. You're not getting a species that's brackish. Fiddler crabs, genus Euca, are widely available, but they're a complex brackish and saltwater species that need mud flats and intertidal zones, and they're not a great place for people to start. Mangrove crabs, the genus Pericysarma, are another commonly available crab I see in pet stores all the time that are brackish water emergent crabs. They need lots of structures that come up out of the water. They need branches and perches and things to climb on. And they're, again, brackish water environments. If you can put them in fresh water, and they will live for a short period of time, but eventually you're going to have a truncated lifespan because the water conditions aren't correct for them. But these guys, the panther crabs from Sulawesi, are an awesome aquatic species. They have bred in captivity. The bulk of the ones available in the hobby, though, are still wild collected, again, mostly as bycatch from tropical fish suppliers. But yeah, there are you'll find other aquatic crabs for sale, but the panthers are one of the best options if you've got a freshwater tank and really want to add something to it to make it a little bit more interesting and have some different organisms.
A little spice. As long as your organisms are at the top, we're good.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I wouldn't put them with anything that's going to spend a lot of time in claw range. So, yeah. Probably
not. Probably a bad idea.
Yeah.
Most awesome. How would you know? Like, I guess if they were available at a, I guess I just wouldn't buy them from a big box store.
Yeah, I mean, and I'm not, some big box stores will correctly label their animals. Some local brick and mortar stores will do so as well. Unfortunately, a lot of times in the hobby, especially when it comes to the commercializations of the animals, common names are what's being relayed. And so, like, these animals luckily have a fairly, I mean, if you Google panther crabs, you're going to find Parathelphusa pantherina, which is this species. There's not any other commonly available crabs that have that common name. But that's not always the case with everything else. You'll get a lot of overlap. And so, I mean, if you can, always try to figure out the scientific name of the animal that you're actually researching. And if not, start with those common names and go by process of elimination, and just take a deep dive or contact specialized hobbyists and keepers. There are dozens of Facebook pages for crab keepers. Again, it's a niche hobby, but it's growing in popularity in the U.S. And I think because it intersects with so many other hobbies and communities, we're pulling from a broad variety of experiences. We've got people that work, heavily with fresh and saltwater aquariums. We've got people that work with paludariums and dart frogs, and you've got it's great intersection of overlapping interests and hobbies where crabs on that Venn diagram kind of just fit right there in the middle of everything. So yeah, they're awesome animals. They're one of my favorite groups of invertebrates. I enjoy working with them a lot.
So super interesting. I love being in the around the ocean shore and seeing how many different crazy species are everywhere.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Niches too. All right, here we go, guys. This is
these guys, and we're gonna lift the camera up and just look down at these guys before I pick one up because I think they'll be easier to see in the habitat. So this is Geosperma denerli, and I just went through one of my habitats and dug up a bunch of them and threw them in here to bring upstairs. I keep these guys like other members of their genus. These are like the land crabs we looked at before, almost fully terrestrial animals. They will periodically retreat back to water when avoiding predation, or if the conditions in the habitat are too dry. Occasionally if a food source falls in the water, they may kind of pursue that down into the water, but they are almost exclusively terrestrial crabs. These animals, like the Caribbean land crabs we looked at, are very independent of aquatic environments, and they take it one step further, where those G. carcinus land crabs still have to return to the ocean to deposit their broods for successful reproduction. The vampire crabs in genus Geosperma from Indonesia, Southeast Asia, and India have developed a brood pouch, and this little brood pouch on the underside of a female's body is what allows them to live completely independent of those aquatic environments. The larvae develop all of their life stages in that brood pouch and emerge as very, very small, tiny miniature versions of the adults, also capable of living on land, feeding and avoiding predators as soon as they emerge. And this species of crab has helped drive a lot of the current popularity around land crabs because they're small adult size. These animals average around 2 to 2.5 inches or so diagonal leg span. Their environments, you can set them up. They do quite well in heavily planted environments. Paludariums work well. Even tropical vivariums with a small water feature. I always tell people, basically, you're setting these guys up very similar to the way you would dendrobated frogs or poison dart frogs. You're just adding a water feature. You're doing about 70% land, 30% water. For temporary housing, even water dishes that you're changing out periodically work in a temporary capacity. But a gently filtered, aerated water source in the environment for long term is definitely superior to that type of temporary setup. And there's a tremendous variety of species in the hobby, many of which are still awaiting proper taxonomy and classification. A lot of the vampire crabs are just sold with common descriptor names that are based on their color. So you'll see things like the red devil vampire crab, which is Geosperma hagen. These guys here, the denerli, are commonly called purple clawed or purple and black vampire crabs. There's blue-backed vampire crabs, which is Geosperma roxy, and there's a ton of them that are also just Geosperma SP tomato or SP cherry red or SP blue claw, and it can lead to a lot of confusion if those common names aren't being used across the spectrum. If different importers are just creating a fun little descriptive common name, but then it's not used by the next import that comes in, then it can lead to a lot of confusion with the animals.
Of course. We have that problem in the ice pod community too right now.
Yes. Oh yeah. But these guys are a lot of fun. They're again fairly easy to care for as long as their needs are being met. These animals are quite hardy, like the Caribbean land crabs we discussed. Warm air temperature and high ambient humidity are important for respiration, and substrate that they can burrow into. I generally recommend at least 3 inches or so of substrate. They will occasionally molt out in the open, but generally we'll try to find a burrow in which to retreat to in order to make those processes. I do advise when you're getting vampire crabs and you're setting up a habitat for these animals, definitely try to make sure you're getting all the same species. Not all of them are super aggressive towards one another, but occasionally you'll find higher levels of aggression exhibited whenever you're trying to mix multiple species together in a habitat. It's definitely best if you can get them all from one source, so you know exactly what you're getting, or again, just being very sure that you have the specific species you have. Getting them all of the same type is a definite benefit to getting an assortment of species, and then creating like a battle royale scenario for your vampires.
So they're racist. All right. All right. Fair thing to watch out for.
Yeah.
Now, are you breeding them? That seemed to be kind of a lot in that tub.
So we've had success, not with this species, with Dennerli, but I've had success with Hagen and Thymanicum. We have had captive reproduction of those groups, and the way I have them set up is 1 to 2 males for about every 6 females or so in an enclosure. I use 20-gallon longs with a glass canopy, 70% land, 30% water, lots of moss, lots of leaf litter, lots of low-growing, super hardy plants, things that won't mind their roots periodically getting dug up and stuff. So I use a lot of like pothos and philodendrons and photonia and things that grow well on high humidity and aren't really particular about light quality or conditions of that nature. And if you set them up correctly, if you've got males and females and you've got good environmentals and they've got a good food source, given enough time, as long as your specimens aren't, again, with many of them being wild caught, as long as you're not starting with very old or senior animals, you will very likely begin to see small crablets in the environment. They are cannibalistic. So, you're going to lose a percentage of them to attrition, just specimens either feeding on each other right after a molt, or even the adults occasionally picking on some of the juveniles that they find. But typically, as long as there's enough cover, as long as you've got leaf litter, you've got moss, you've got places for them to hide and retreat, the babies are faster than the adults, and they can generally get out of the way before they end up as a meal. And again, also, if you're feeding the adults, there's less inclination for them to try to hunt and chase down offspring in the habitat. But yeah, they're incredible little crabs. And I think that for the invertebrate hobby, vampire crabs represent the best opportunity and option to kind of bring crustaceans more into the public attention, because again, small size, they do great in a planted environment. They will captive produce. There is a potential for us to be less and less reliant on wild collected specimens. There's a level of potential sustainability with vampire crabs that we're not really seeing within many of our other larger land crabs, because those animals' reproductive cycle is still intrinsically linked to the ocean, which is just not always the easiest thing to simulate in your living room.
No, I would say no. You'd have to use a basement for that.
Yeah, probably. Yeah, maybe a pool.
You have to get permission from the wife. Yeah, in the basement. Yeah, some kind of pool. I feel like. One of those old people pools, or those walk-in bathtubs.
Yeah.
Door, look, it's the tide. Whoosh.
Yeah.
What kind of a substrate are you using for the guys that are land?
So there are commercially available substrates as well. Available, and generally, most of your planted substrates do work well for vampires. They're not particularly sensitive to anything in the substrates. What I'm using is a mixture of shredded cocoa husk. I use a fermented flake soil base that I mix in with all of my substrates. I use it a lot for beetle larvae and isopods and millipedes, but I also mix it in with anything I'm going to do a planted habitat gets a bio load of flake soil, leaf litter, some rotting hardwood. If I need long-term nutrients breaking down in the substrate, I'm going to add those things to it. But organic, plant-based, composted topsoil, shredded cocoa husk is fine as a base. It's an inert substrate, but it does work as you're kind of blending and mixing other substrates. I mix a little bit of sand in with it, and then all of that gets topped with lots of fresh leaf litter and some moss and low growing plants as well. And you could use decor of any sort, rocks and cork and pieces of wood, and anything that they can quickly retreat under is going to help de-stress the animals and let them acclimate to the environment slowly. And they'll become, again, they do get bolder with time, especially as they begin to associate food sources. If you're introducing food in the same place, over time, they'll begin to associate that, and you'll see specimens out more frequently. But because of their smaller size, they face a lot of natural predation. Sure. So they tend to be very reactive to things happening around them. If you're approaching the habitat, if you're occluding light, if there's vibrations, or you're bumping the tank when you lift a glass canopy off or something like that, you're going to send them scattering, and that's just their natural defensive cycle. So and a lot of times that's when you actually see them hit the water, because that's a quick way to retreat, is to run back to the water. So.
Very cool. I would love to just see little tiny crabs run around all of a sudden.
Yep.
Do that double take. You're doing regular maintenance, and then you're like, wait a minute.
Oh, yeah. Because, I mean, there's, I have springtails, and there's, those Drosophila and things like that get in the habitat. Yeah. And the first time I saw baby time manicum, it was I had given the group of vampires a chunk of fish, left it overnight, and then I always remove it the next day, because whatever they don't eat just gets nasty. So I reached in and went to pick it up, and as soon as I picked it up, underneath it, I saw just scattering tiny little, very, very small things, but moving faster than anything that was in the habitat. And I started moving some leaf litter around and found a few more, and I was like, oh, these are baby crabs. And it was exhilarating. Absolutely no way to tell how many of them there were until they grow larger. So I don't know what my brood sizes are. I don't know how many I'm losing to attrition, but it's still exciting. And any number that you bring to larger sizes is always exciting. So yeah. But again, there's still a tremendous amount of taxonomy and work to be done with this genus. We're seeing new species announced almost every year as more information becomes available, and researchers are working with these animals and trying to determine species barriers and where natural ranges end and where they overlap. And then there's a couple things coming into the hobby now, specifically from Borneo, in genus Thaxina and Lepidothelphusa, that I'm seeing occasionally labeled as like Bornean vampire crabs. I've got a couple of each, and been experimenting with care. They're a little bit smaller than Geostrosoma, and they definitely seem to be more fond of the water than the land. Giving them access to large areas of land, they tend to spend most of their time in the water. So I started setting them up with more water and less land, and more water and then just emergence, and seeing exactly where they seem to want to be. There's definitely some overlap with vampire care. They will emerge on the land to feed and explore their environment, but they seem to be a lot more fond of the water. They will feed on land, but I also occasionally see them emerging, grabbing food sources and then pulling them back into the water. And I don't know if that's purely a scavenging strategy. Maybe the water makes their food easier to filter out through their mouth parts and feed, or they might just be more comfortable feeding in an aquatic environment. But they, again, you'll see them periodically labeled as like Borneo vampire crabs, or panda vampire crab, I think was one that I saw as a common name. But just, buyers beware. They're not vampire crabs. They're a similar species that has some slight care overlaps, but if you set them up, expecting them to behave the way vampires will, you're going to be surprised, because they're not going to. They definitely seem to be more aquatic. So, but still capable of emerging on land. So also house them in secure environments. Be cautious of things like cords and any sort of filtration or any openings that extend out of the habitat. They're quite good at climbing things. So,
sure.
Yeah. But it is interesting, and it makes me excited. Like, I was very excited to get those crabs because I knew what they were, and just had not had an opportunity to acquire them or keep them yet. But it makes me excited to see that, there's an evolving interest in these animals. There's more demand, and I'm just excited to see what new species we actually gain access to in the coming years.
As we see every day, I'll check the news, and every day there's like new species found in wherever, and it's they'll be like, it's a giant, and it's like it's a giant fruit fly. What are you talking about? But yeah, I just saw something the other day that they discovered some new species of crab that was like in the Amazon or something.
Yeah.
It was a semi-terrestrial.
Yeah. So, see, I think that's an untapped. We get a lot of the land crab stuff in the hobby is coming out of Southeast Asia because the fish industry is so well entrenched there, so popular there, and there's so much support for it. I think that's one of the. I'm excited to see. Again, there's so much riverine systems and mud flats in the Amazon, and that's far enough away from marine environments that they're probably evolved reproductive systems that could be replicated in captivity. And there's some really cool mud crabs in South America that I'd love to have. I'd love to just, even if captive reproduction doesn't prove to be a sustainable thing, just to have, a new species and something that's different and something that, we can learn from and learn about is exciting.
Now, these Bornean species that you're talking about, are they freshwater as well?
Yeah, they seem to be exclusively freshwater. Okay. As far as reproductive system, I'm not aware that there's any hard information out there regarding it, but they're obviously a freshwater species, again with some terrestrial capabilities, but definitely seem to prefer the aquatic environments, or at least access to larger areas of water. But other than that, there's just not a ton of information out there regarding them, and like a lot of other things, more of them will probably enter the hobby faster than we can actually, discover these things. And it's going to be a lot of trial and error. It's going to be people purchasing these crabs thinking that they're vampires, because again, that's the few times I've seen them listed, that's how they've been listed, is Bornean vampire crabs and panda vampire crab.
Okay. All right. Fantastic. Panda vampire crab. See,
that was the Lepidophthalfusa, and they're really cool. Again, slightly smaller than vampires, but similar body shape, maybe a little leggier. And then, like I said, setting them up, though, they definitely prefer the water over land access.
That's funny.
Yeah.
Just a funny, weird little. That might be the one I want for mine then, because well, it's probably 70-30. The setup that I'm doing is probably 70-30 anyway, but I don't know. We'll see. So I plan morning geckos, vampire crabs, and pea puffers.
Yes, the little dwarf pea puffers. Yep.
Yeah,
and they're a full freshwater species. I've got some puffers and stuff too. Most of my puffers are brackish though, but the little peas are pretty popular because of their full freshwater and small enough size that they're not ripping apart any other tank mates.
Right.
So
this is going to be like exclusively them. Maybe dwarf Cory cats, but I don't think so. I think it's just going to be pea puffers. That's fascinating.
That'll be a great build.
Yeah, I didn't know that they burrow into the silt.
Yeah, and sand. Yeah, into the silt and sand. They'll so find a little safe place to hide and sleep. Right.
I know. Now we're off topic already.
Yeah.
Which is funny because whenever I get off topic with you, it's like talking to Russ Wilson. Like, you have that in your house.
Yeah.
We can go on and on. I think the vampire crabs are great, and I think the idea of having them breed for you.
Oh yeah.
They're definitely my top one. I know I'm going to be tempted on Sunday at NARBC at Tinley to see the other crabs, because I was checking them out last year. There, and because there were some people with some, and they had them just in the plastic tubs, the drawer situations, just for the show, obviously, because that's all that was in there. No substrate, no nothing, just the crab. Mm-hmm. I was curious to see how they gave them to you to take home. It's just like a 5-gallon bucket from Menards.
So like when I got these Ruricolas from Barbados, they shipped them in citrus bags, like orange bags, like what you would buy a dozen oranges in, like or something. No, they weren't the mesh ones. They're like the solid-sided bags.
Okay.
But they're like the plastic produce bags, and at first I was like, well, this is a terrible way to ship them. But then after having them for a little bit, I was like, that's actually not a bad idea. That works well. Like, because you can't put them, you can't put them in a deli cup or anything like that. They'll just burst out. That's that or solid sided cloth bags are probably the safest way to actually manage the animals over transit. So yeah.
See that box from Amazon on your Ring doorbell, just walking across.
Yeah. One claw sticking out of it.
Yeah, just legs. It's stealing itself. What the hell? Yeah, I think those are. That's just a neat idea. To have a big crab would be kind of fun too. Now, are they the bigger guys? Do they have decent personalities? Like you said, the one is pretty.
Yeah. So I mean, like my big guy is. Let me get him back out again. He's a crowd pleaser.
I just think, like, I love the vampire crabs. I love the moon crabs, but this guy is Tank is. I've never seen that before in captivity.
Yeah. So he's done a lot of programs, and so he'll just kind of perch on my arm, and if you look, he's vicing, grabbing on with those legs, and that's the same type of locomotion and climbing mechanism he would use to, climb a tree in his natural environment, is just kind of vice gripping with those legs and moving backwards up those structures until he finds the food source that he wants. But, again, like any other animal, if I were to begin behaving like a predator, if I were to grab him in a aggressive manner, or restrain him or injure him or something like that, he absolutely could defend himself. I've taken a couple pinches from these guys, and it's impressive.
Now these guys too, I'm noticing the crab, like, okay, this one and the moon crab guy. Sorry, I know I'm using generic names. I'm sorry.
Yeah. You're good.
The trash crab and the moon crab both have the two claws are different. They look like they are different builds. Like the one on his left looks, I think it's his left. Yeah, it would be. Is slimmer.
His left. Yes, it is slightly slimmer. This one's a little bit larger, and like a lot of the other genus Uka, male crabs tend to have larger appendages. Sometimes both of them are larger. Sometimes a single one is larger. And it's like with Uka, like with the fiddler crabs, it's, to an extent, maybe a courtship aspect. It's also, to ward against predation. They just want to be left alone. And if they can startle potential predators with a large, flashy claw structure, they're less likely to end up on somebody's menu. So
genius. Or to battle. I've seen the fiddler crabs like throw each other around with their claws.
Oh yeah,
which is fun to watch on a David Attenborough special.
Yeah,
there he goes. He's calming down a little bit. I haven't seen one of those guys at the education shows yet. I've got to head out your way or something. So, all right, here's our fun questions. All right, so we're going to wrap it up here pretty quick.
Yeah,
we're at our hour almost.
So, wow. Yep.
I know it went fast. It went really fast, but I feel like we packed a lot, or you packed a lot of information in there. So these all have a right answer. It will be graded. So this is the part of the show where I get to feel smart. This is another new thing. So what's your favorite cartoon crab? Who is your favorite cartoon crab?
Oh, man. I mean, there's not many options, is there? There's like, what is there?
There's
Sebastian from Little Mermaid.
There's Sebastian. Yep.
Yeah. There's Mr. Krabs from SpongeBob SquarePants.
There is. Yep. I'm going to bet
Are there other... I don't know, cartoon crab. Yeah, I mean, I guess the one that resonates. You know what? Just because he had such an incredible singing voice, the big crab from Moana, and I'm already blanking on its name, but that was a great musical number.
Nice.
And I can't remember the character's name, but that was a great crab.
Jermaine did his.
Yeah, Jermaine Clement. Yeah.
Oh my God.
I can hear the song in my head, but I can't remember the character.
Johnny, so good. I could sing that song like right now. I have a 6-year-old daughter, so we.
Oh, yep. I do as well. So we're probably in that same.
Okay. Yeah. Well, so you should know this. You should know the answer to this question, which it wasn't. Taka. Was it Taka? No.
I remember.
Te Fiti was the island.
Yeah.
Taka was the evil version of the island. and then like without the heart or whatever.
Yep.
It starts with a T. It also starts with a T. Come on, there's like 5 of you watching this, or 6. You guys got to know this.
Somebody knows.
Name or Google it. Where's Justin when I need him? Justin, if you watch this later, you failed me today. Oh, Ellen Gian is here. Hello, Joe. Vampire crabs I got from you are doing great.
Oh, yay. All right. That's wonderful
One even
to hear.
molted.
Oh, that's awesome.
Laura says you need a sleeve to put on your arm, so he has a
place. I know. Look, I can
like
just
a falconer glove.
Just set them on there and then walk around. Yeah, this is what I did the other day when I used them at a program. He just kind of hung out on my arm. So
if you could get him to perch on your shoulder and like,
oh, I know, it'd be great.
Glue a little
pirate hat. Need to ship at that point. Yeah,
just glue a little pirate hat on there. Right? Yeah, probably do that with Elmer's glue. You'd be fine. Favorite cartoon crab is supposed to be Craboo from We Bare Bears.
Yep.
Your answer's good. I don't know if you ever watched that show, but get your daughter into that ASAP. It's a lot of fun.
Yeah. She's watched some of those. Yeah. She's on a Bluey kick right now, though. So.
Oh, you are living the life right now.
Yeah.
How many times has Bluey made you cry?
I mean, it's a good show. It's got some real heart and emotion in it. So
yep. I can't tell you how many times I've cried. The one episode I watch. I belong to Facebook groups and everything on that show because they explain things or they have weird theories. I have theories that they drove cats extinct on that world because they have toys. They have cat toys and they're like characters. But I think cats are extinct or they're Americans. I can't tell.
Could be.
They may be Americans. But yeah, there's a lot of theories I have for that show that are fun. But Bluey is the best cartoon. That's not on the test, and there's no crab in that. Crabs. They did have crabs in that episode, in one episode at least. Where they're on the beach, and there's one crab that Bluey chases, and then like 60 crabs come after her. little
goes the other way. Yep.
Google says the crab is named Shiny. No, that's the song.
That's the song, yeah.
It's not Taka. It's not Tafiti. It's going to drive me crazy.
Yeah.
I can see them talking to him, and he says his own name in the song. So, all right, most delicious crab.
Believe it or not, I'm not a huge fan of crab.
What?
Yeah.
I mean, is this why?
Yeah, I mean, maybe. I've never crab and lobster, neither, but I'll eat shrimp like crazy. So I don't know. I get favorite crab would be shrimp.
Favorite crab would be shrimp. Well,
we'll do that.
Surprised.
Yeah.
I'm surprised to hear that's not the correct answer.
Yeah.
It's actually snow crab. So, yeah, cold. You got to get it cooked and then let it cool off. That's it. That's the go. Hot butter. All right. So what species of crab is the live action Sebastian the Crab?
I didn't see the live action, so I'm not 100% sure.
Let me see if I can pull up an image. He looks like a fiddler crab to me, but he looks like one of these crabs that we featured today. Action Sebastian the Crab. Oh, look, I already looked it up earlier. So we're going to do a share screen thing that I'm very good at now. And you'll be able to see. Here he is. Okay, let me do a share screen. Present.
See if he recognizes him.
Oh. Yeah, see if he recognizes his friend. Okay, here we go.
Yeah.
There you go. Is it showing? There you are.
Yeah, I mean, I see where you're going with the fiddler because of the greatly enlarged right pincher. I would be purely throwing out guesses. I'm not as familiar with marine crabs as I am my terrestrials, as I don't have a right answer on this. Option, so
I don't have a right answer on this, but I know he spends a good time of the movie terrestrially and in freshwater, and in marine environment. So he's an all-purpose crab.
Yeah, intertidal species of some sort here.
An intertidal species.
Yeah.
Sometimes I hate being us. Let me tell you. I can't just watch a cartoon or a show. I have to be like, what is this supposed to be?
Oh, yeah.
Tamatoa.
Yep. That's best cartoon crab.
Oh, and crayfish are the best. Alan says crayfish are the best. Well, they're not crabs either, you dingus.
Work with crayfish, too.
You work with crayfish too. I have the
so when you're ready for a crayfish episode,
I have one of the
let me know.
self-replicating ones. The I don't know, a marbled crayfish, I think is what it was called. That's one of the generic names, I guess. It's probably got a few. So she hasn't bred yet, but I got her pretty small.
Yeah,
so we'll see. Fingers crossed. I don't know what I'll do with the babies, but I'll have to get something that'll eat them. But
yeah.
I don't have anything else because they breed by like the dozens or the hundreds, right?
Probably hundreds. Yeah.
Gone? Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, I've got Cambarellus, which I've got a couple species of Cambarellus, which are the dwarf crayfishes from Mexico, and as well as southwestern U.S. I have some North American species in genus Procambarus, and then I've got some from Papua New Guinea in genus Chirax that are my absolute favorites. They're absolutely stunning.
They're beautiful.
Rainbow crayfishes, blues and pinks, and just they're absolutely stunning. So
that's cool.
Yeah,
that's cool. It's weird for me to imagine an essentially prey species being that outlandish, being that garish.
They're beautiful
because they're not toxic. They don't have a toxin, right?
No, not at all. They're not harmful. That what I would say a lot of those aposematic colorations benefit the animal is the color shock. If you're a predatory animal and you're digging through muddy water and leaves, and all of a sudden there is a brilliant and bright flash of blue and red and pink and all of these other aposematic colors, it's more likely to startle you when it's accompanied with that movement, as opposed to possibly triggering that predatory response. So you're buying yourself precious seconds as a prey animal by being able to flash those colors. And there's the same color strategy we see in a lot of Lepidoptera, a lot of butterflies and day-flying moths that have drab underwings, so that when their wings are folded, they camouflage them with their environment. But then when they open them, they reflect bright colors. That flash of momentary color, it's sometimes all they need to get away from a bird or a small mammal that may otherwise end up eating them. So,
or it looks like an owl, like
like Caligo genus. Yeah, Caligo genus have the giant eye spots. Yeah,
how terrifying would that be if you're the predator? Like you're like, eat this delicious moth, and my God, run!
Yeah,
you would freak out. You would freak out.
Yeah.
All right, we have one last question. You're the second guest that we've gotten this to.
Yep.
You get the option to have one superpower. You get to pick. What would it be? Can't say Superman because that's bogus.
Yeah. No, one superpower. I mean, I think the most grounded and realistic superpower that we develop as humans is our ability to influence others, right? Like, I think that is a superpower that people can have. And I think that's one thing I strive to do, not in a negative way, but I try to influence people to be passionate about the natural world and the things that we share this planet with. So I guess furthering that, if I had to choose a superpower, it would be, to have the D&D equivalent of charm person just always available.
And you're a D&D guy too, Joe. How are we not best friends? How are we not best friends?
Yeah.
We hoard animals. We're both dorks. Like, I think you're just too wholesome to be a best friend with me. I think that's the deal. Like Russ, which I think is an excellent trait. I wish that was my superpower, to be a little more wholesome.
Yeah.
I didn't swear once this episode. I'm so proud of myself. I took the effort. This guy is so I
know he's slowly getting higher up my arm, so I'm gonna push him back around this way.
He said your ear looks delicious. He was showing me that in sign language. Now he's not giving you any pinches now, right? He's just kind of like feeling.
No, not at all. Now he's just kind of grappling. So he'll use his claws to shift his weight and push himself up, but he's not defending himself. If he was defending himself, his behavior would be very different. He would retreat, trying to make himself into a smaller target, a smaller space, and then he would extend those pinchers up outwards as a defensive posture. And then if I were to, get my hands closer, he would attempt to grab and pinch.
He'd tell you no. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, no, bud.
Yeah.
Do they take food from you? Like,
yes, absolutely.
From you? Yeah.
You can absolutely take a choice food item and hold it out and either place it directly in their claws, in which case they'll grab it and accept it. Or if you're patient enough and still enough, you can hold it out in front of them. They'll investigate it. They pick up on that scent of that food source and they'll come forward to take it from you. Very food motivated animals. So
would they be comfortable enough in your hand? Like, I know they don't like being held. They're not for that. Like, he's very tolerant of it, but like most invertebrates. But would they be comfortable enough? Like, he probably would. to take a banana. You said banana's like the
best.
best.
Yeah, that's one of their favorites. Yeah.
Yeah, so you think you would take it like right now if you had like
possibly? Yeah, I actually don't have.
Yeah, I'm not asking you to go get a banana. It's fine.
But he probably would. I don't know. He's been handled a lot today, and he had a program yesterday, so he might be a little less accepting. But under normal circumstances, yeah, if I offer a select high valued food source, they'll generally accept it.
High value food source.
Yeah.
You should be some kind of zookeeper because you speak just like a zookeeper. Which I've talked to a lot lately. We're gonna have a guy on from Brookfield Zoo who keeps gorilla. He's one of the gorilla guys.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, I met him last week.
Cool.
He poor guy came in for his lunch and he got farmed into doing my show. So
that's how it happens.
Yeah, I used my daughter. I was like, "Hey, go talk to that guy. He's a zookeeper." And then he started saying gorillas, and I was like, "Get out of the way. I need to talk."
Yeah.
Go over there and play with those other kids. But yeah, Joe, thanks for coming on.
Yeah,
I appreciate
absolutely,
the time.
man.
I know it was early. I don't usually go early. I want you to understand how respected that makes you. So
well, I appreciate it.
I would have been like, normally I'd be like, well, guess you're not going to be on the show. Check.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think you did it twice for me in my time period, so we can adjust it a little bit.
Awesome.
So, if you're watching this and you want to come on the show, that you have to earn that right. You're not just getting that, or you have to be from Germany. Those are the choices.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, we've had some international folks on that we went at midnight.
Have to adjust for time zones. Yep.
Yeah. So that's fair. That's fair because it's like it's Tuesday here, it's like Wednesday there or something. Yeah. Figure that out. Or it's August. I don't even know how that works, but
you're gonna do a video or a stream from Tinley?
I'm gonna shoot some video and probably put it together as shorts or something.
Awesome.
If I see somebody I really have been trying to get on the show, like there's a lychee guy there he's been saying, yeah, sure, I'll do it for a year and a half now.
Yeah.
And then never returns my emails. But yeah.
Oh no.
I'll be doing definitely and take a million pictures. Because there's just so much cool stuff there and so many fun people. I've taken a million business cards and I don't think I've had a single one of those people come on the show. They're down until I walk away, I guess. So
yeah.
But I've never had a single one of those people come on. So I'm going to be a little more like, hey, one guy was like positive. I said I was going to come to his house in Atlanta and film from there. And I was like,
yeah.
No, I have like 500 viewers. That's not.
Yeah. We're not traveling.
I'm not. I'd go to Utah and visit my like actual friends. And see them. But yeah, I'm definitely going to be filming something from there.
Well, I look forward to seeing some footage from it.
Yeah, awesome, man, awesome. Well, hey, thanks again for coming on.
Absolutely.
And, good luck taking care of the rest of your zoo.
Oh yeah, it's a full-time job.
I'm going to come up with an animal that I think you have, and we'll have you back on.
Excellent. Always happy to help.
Awesome, Joe. Thanks so much.
Have a good week.
You too.
Thank you.
Nope. Oh, wait, stop.